by Paulo Freire, approaching an emancipation concept. And for this, we will study the short story. So my general objective was to investigate the relation between the character's consciousness development of the fantastic narrative and the consciousness of the reader. And my first specific objective was to analyze the path of the character's awareness raising in the short story. And my second specific objective was to associate symbols and processes that emerge within the text to the circumstances of the reader's consciousness development.
Não tem botão. Certo? Continua. Isso não funciona.
Show.
So you can pass this slide. So in my theoretical framework, I describe more thoroughly what is in fact the fantastic genre, according obviously to the authors I'm bringing in this research. So according to them, it is something that confronts the natural. It is known for raising questions about mental illness, about alienation, insanity, and the phenomenon is there to express the dark, to express the traumas of this character, and with this display an opportunity for the reader to interpret. To unravel a little more about Freire's theory, he really wanted a world where people would have the ability to understand the reality and in consequence of this change this reality. So when I'm bringing my research, the fantastic narrative, it is to investigate how it could have an active part in this process of critical consciousness. Then to conclude this part, I studied Elizabeth Carlson and her 4-step process of developing critical consciousness, which is number one, So moving on to the important and analytical part of this research, we have the first step, which is, as we said before, is passive adaptation. So this step is when the individual encounters new experiences or information but does not engage with it. In this phase, the person absorbs the material without questioning or emotionally connecting to it, and the engagement is passive, as they simply accept what is presented without deeper reflection or involvement. So, to exemplify this attitude, I will talk about reification, about alterity, and alienation. So, the reification part of that I have identified in this narrative, it is when the human character, the main character of this narrative, he acts with a very reified look towards the robot and towards his alien friend. So he's not interested in knowing them. He's not interested in knowing if they have a history to tell, if they have a story to tell. So he's only interested in what they can provide them, what they can provide him. So he interested in collecting valuable items. He interested in gaining money, and what the robot and what this alien partner can give him that. So he's only interested in this. So he has this reified look towards them. They do not matter for him. He's the only one that matters for himself. And he mistreats them. So he believes that he's better than this alien friend, and he believes he's better than the robot. So this is the reification that I bring in this analysis. The alterity concept, I believe, it's when the robot is represented as the other in the narrative. He's represented as this otherness that contrasts with the human character. So he behaves, he has these attitudes, these human attitudes. So he's compassionate, he's empathetic, he cares, and the human does not. So there is this paradox between them. There is this contrast between them. So there is this alterity. And the alienation part, we believe that this is where the human character is completely empty. He's alienated all the time. He reinforces all those oppressive situations. He contributes to them, and he does not have self-awareness. He has a very low level of consciousness, and again, he's only interested in the money that he could gain by selling the robot. The second part is emotional engagement. So at this part, the robot starts to telling the story. He starts telling how he was there for Miss Emily. He starts to tell how she was sick, how she dealt with her sickness. It is a very emotional part. And the human character starts to engage with it. He starts to ask questions about Miss Emily's situation. He asks the robot all the time on who was responsible for her condition. He asks what could people have done to help her. So he searches for accountability in the story of the robot while he tells the story. The importance of name and identity, for me, it was a very moving part, because the robot has a name. His name is Samson, and then a serial number in front of it. And the human character knows that this is his name, but then the robot says that Miss Emily used to call him Sammy. And then he says that he does not have a preference between either calling him Samson or Sammy, but he actually does. We can understand that he does have a preference of which one we will call him. And then in the beginning, the human character refers the robot as Samson. So he just said, there's a line where he said, "Whatever you say, Samson." But then a little further, he asks a question to the robot, and then he says, "Do you have any understanding of the passage of time, Sammy?" So he chooses to refer to the robot as the name he prefers, to the human name that Sammy has. And then I believe this is a very special part, because even unconsciously, he begins to recognize the robot's identity. And then we have conscientization and human practices. The human praxis is a concept advocated by Paulo Freire that is the propellant event where the consciousness raising starts. So there is a moment, a story being told for you, or in this case, the narrative, the robot telling a story. So it is a moment where you will engage with something that will make you think. It is the moment where something changes. There's a key point where something changes, and you start to think about, you start the critical consciousness process. So this is the human practice. So the third part is cognitive awakening, is the third step of critical consciousness. So it is where individuals begin to question and analyze societal norms and contradictions. It involves a deep reflection on one's beliefs and the realization of how personal and collective identities are shaped by power dynamics. So this is the moment where there is a deep reflection, a deep engagement. In the previous step, the emotional engagement part, it was, I believe it was a superficial engagement. And this third step, it is a more deep. So we have the paradox of being human. As we said before in the alterity part, the robot acts with human characteristics. So he's compassionate, he's empathetic, he cares, he really wants to cry. So he feels, in the story, he says that he feels pain. So he really wants to cry, he really wants to feel the loss of Miss Emily. And I believe this is the moment where the reader, while reading, we ask, what does it mean to be human? What is being human? Because we have a robot, we have an object, a non-human being acting with human characteristics, acting with human attitudes. So what does it mean actually to be human? Because we have a human character in the story who's not acting with those characteristics. So it is a very important thing to think about. And then post-humanism, it is a concept that I bring very briefly in my analysis, that is post-humanism would challenge the idea that humans are the center of everything. So Muhammad Monirul Islam talks about a future shaped by technology, raising questions about who will benefit from it and who might be harmed. So I believe it is an important concept because it makes us question how all these high advancements, these high technological advancements are actually more beneficial than it is harmful, and who are these technological advancements are actually being beneficial for, and who are being more harmful. So there's this I believe it's important to explore this thing. And then awareness in critical consciousness. In critical consciousness is needed to analyze, it is needed to question, and it is needed to discuss the status quo, so the mundane and normal cultural practices can be seen in a new light. So it is a moment where you question everything you know. So this this is hegemonic groups that I know. This hegemonic system that I know, how have I actually learned, what have I actually learned so far, and all the things that I've learned, what can I do for them? How can this be different? Because if I am reading something, if I'm listening to someone's story and they are totally different from my reality, how can I think of it as being different for me? How can I not contribute anymore to anything of these oppressive situations, these oppressive groups? And then last one and fourth one, intentions to act step, is where they become fully active in a transformation process. It emphasizes the importance of empathy and collective actions in fostering a more equitable and compassionate world. So this step, the human gives up, he chooses to act upon all that story, or he has learned so far. So he gives up selling the robot. He gives up his profit so he can give the robot, so he can give Sammy a more honorable ending. So he goes through a process where there is this self-reflection. Because there is a line in the short story at the end that was very also meaningful and powerful for me, because he says this the robot Sammy was a better man than I ever was. He was a better person than I ever was. And this means that he understands how his greedy ideals, how his human greedy ideals so far to conquer everything meant nothing when you compare to what Sammy wanted, that was just to cry. He only wanted to feel pain and want to cry. And he understood that Sammy was honest, he was compassionate, as we said so many times before. He was empathetic, and he understands this by the end. He understands how Sammy was better, even though he was a machine. He was better than him being a human. So this leads us to future envision. So this shift moves the protagonist from just watching to actively engaging as he listens to Sammy's story and gains a deeper understanding of his humanity. Paulo Freire's theory connects to this process by explaining how it helps people regain their lost identity and gives them the power to change their oppressed lives. So again, this is the moment where the character and also the reader has this possibility of reevaluating what they have been as a person so far. What have they? How can they change their current reality, their current oppressive reality. And so this journey illustrates that achieving critical consciousness involves a profound shift in awareness, in responsibility, and in the understanding of humanity, even if not human. So my final considerations, we have observed that it was possible to link the path that the character took in the narrative to the readers. The protagonist's journey in Robots Don't Cry highlights a shift from detachment to empathy, encourage a deep, reflective reading. The narrative fosters critical awareness by combining intellectual and emotional engagement, helping readers confront hegemonic themes. The study demonstrated how fantastic literature can promote critical emancipation and challenge passive acceptance, contributing to literary theories. And finally, the research suggests using fantastic literature as a tool in the classroom to develop critical thinking skills and guide reflective discussions. These are my references. Thank you so much.
Pode sentar, Laura. A câmera desativou? Mas será que ela tá? Não. Tá fechado. A gente está fazendo, está começando com o membro de fora, mas vai fazer de fora, daqui vai ficar.
So good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you, Laura. Thank you, Professor Marcy, for inviting me to be here today. I have been waiting for this day. I've been curious to read Laura's work since last year, which was actually February, when Marcio talked about her work. And it was a very good surprise, as I knew it would be. because it's such a Aline and I were talking. It's such a different approach on the fantastic and literature, uniting Paulo Freire and the ideas on the fantastic as a backdrop, actually. So it was a joy to read, Laura. First of all, congratulations. I think your work is very well written. Just one question. Do I have time?
10 minutes.
10 minutes?
So
Okay. Okay.
We're not so strict.
Okay. So it was a joy to read. It was so easy to read. You make everything sound so fluid. So even the theoretical framework. You bring some ideas very well connected. The paragraphs they end, and then another one begins, and they make sense. And then you start your 4-step process, and I was reading eagerly, like waiting for the next one. So very well written. I had almost nothing to say about your writing. It was close to perfect. I think I only have there's one quotation you repeat, you use it twice, but it's not a big deal, it's not a problem, and it's something that you can probably correct very easily if you want to. And so on your writing, it's very, very good. And the idea is awesome. I don't know if it was your idea, Marcius, or both of you. So congrats, because it's really refreshing for us who are used to the Gothic, to the fantastic, finding something new. So I have lots of suggestions, as always. I think, and I have insights, and I put all of them here. If maybe you want to go on with the study, maybe you wanna forget it forever. Sometimes it happens, but if you want to go on, I have some suggestions. I will talk about some of them. The others, I will leave it here for you, and I can send it to you later. Let's see what I have here that is more interesting for us to talk right now. First of all, I have a suggestion on the title. I thought the title could change. You could make a small change. The process of characters' consciousness raising is very clear. We can all see that the character changing his mind, but I think the reader's conscientization process is not that central in your work to be in the title. So I would suggest, again, you will talk to your advisor and think if it makes sense. I would remove the reader's conscientization from your title, because if you read the title the way it is, it seems to be a more central part of your work, and it's actually a small part, because most of the time we talk about the character, right? So it's a suggestion, and I'm a fan of the direct, concise titles. So, but anyway, it's an idea. Let's see what else I have here. I have some ideas. I think the changing, the transformation of the human character is very interesting. I think you have a character study here, and maybe if you want to broaden the subject, you could use the same author that Alex used, which is Betty Bright. She has a whole book on the character, and maybe explore this idea of a dynamic character, because I don't know if you remember my classes some years ago, that I used to talk about the static character or the dynamic character. And the dynamic one is the one that changes. He goes through essential change during the story, and this happens to the human. He changes completely, right? He's a very mean person, and he becomes a bit more human in the end. And he goes through an epiphany. There's so much to talk about this phenomenon, as you name it. And so maybe it's another source of information for you if you want to go on. What else? You will see that I have highlighted a lot of sentences here. Some of them they go nowhere, so it's just me highlighting for my own understanding. Okay, but another point of interest is I think the human character goes through a moment of acknowledging of the truth. It's like the loss of innocence or something like that. When the person or the character, whatever it may be, realizes the nature of the world, of any other
ways of
innocence. Yes. So it's another way of looking at the character and this transformation of the character that you could also explore if you want. Let's go on. I'm not keeping track of the time. Cool. I have some questions for you. I promise they're not going to be tricky, but let's leave them for the end. Okay, let's go. The quotation, I have it here if you want to check later. I have something I need to say. I think we should all of us who enjoy studying literature should all thank you for that, because you say in your, it's the page 15, you say that literature has the power to open the reader's eyes to social issues and injustices, acting as a vehicle for deeper understanding and reflection. And it's such a joy to read this coming from a Letras English student, because sometimes we leave literature on the corner, we don't really care, we think it's not really important. It's very good to see someone proving that it is important, or that it might be important if you look at it the right way. So I just wrote beautiful. That's a very beautiful part of your research, acknowledging the importance of literature in a very concrete way. Because when we talk about Paulo Freire, it sounds more concrete, right? So well done. And on the science fiction genre, it's usually very pessimistic. It's the most of the short stories and the novels that revolve around this genre, they're very pessimistic. And so here let's start with the first question I have for you. Why do you think, first of all, do you think this short story is pessimistic? Do you see it as pessimistic? Because it starts very pessimistic. The human character, the sole human character, is a very how can we say not a very nice person. But how does it end? What do you think?
I think it depends on what you're looking for while you're reading it. Because if you're thinking about the whole story, it comes from a very sad thing, because planets are destroyed. Humans have already have taken everything and destroyed everything. But I think this particular part of the story where the robot is found and they interact with him with his story, I think this is not as pessimistic as the rest of them. I think it ends very. I don't think it's good is the answer, but I don't think it's as much as pessimistic as it could be. So I
have a kind of a
yes.
Hope.
I cried, so I don't think it's hopeful. It's hopeful.
I think this makes the short story very different from the other ones, right? Because it's very hard to find a science fiction story that ends happily, or at least with a bit of hope, right?
And the rest of Mike Resnick's stories are also very pessimistic.
Yeah, robots don't cry. When I read the title, I said, "Oh my god!" But yes, I agree with you. And one last thing I would suggest to you, you talk about post-colonialism and post-humanism. I would just suggest like inserting a brief definition of both of them because they're so huge. Both of them are huge subjects with so much to talk about. So maybe for the person who is reading, for the reader who doesn't really know these terms, maybe just a small. I know you talk a bit about both of them, but maybe a bit more just to bring them to the other, because it's your work is already so complete. You don't really need them, right? And sometimes you will bring like these people as the role I'm doing right now, asking you to put a definition there. So maybe you should just leave them. And I'm looking for my last question. I lost it here, but then I'll set you free. Cadê? Acho que eu já falei. Esse microfone não me ajuda. Okay, I found it. Why do you think the alien and the human character don't have names? Why do you think is that? Because the robot does have a name. And the name is, you talked about the name and there's something important to it. But the alien and the human, who is the protagonist, he doesn't have a name. Do you think there's a reason, or it's just random?
I remember we talked about this. I don't remember the conversation, but I think is on purpose for we to in fact not look into them. I don't know if I'm going to express myself right, but I think it's because the story that is being told is about the robot and how he has this humanity, how he has this these characteristics, and how he shifts from just being a robot as we read it to actually having human characteristics, not actually being a human. But I think it's for we to think about how we sometimes forget how people are people, how sometimes we don't see them as who they are. And even sometimes, I'm going to talk about capitalism. Sometimes in this current system, people they just are not people anymore. They just are there to serve something or someone, and they stop being beings. I think that's the reason.
I think it's very interesting, and maybe you should even put it in your. I think it helps your case here, and also he represents all humans. I think this is the pessimistic part, right?
Yes,
he's everyone. He's all of us. Well done. Thank you very much, Laura, and congratulations again.
Thank you. I would like to just say something I forgot in the beginning, that your classes are all the reasons I started researching for this, because I read all this in your project and your classes. We read this kind of stories, how it raises a lot of discussions that we can talk about this, and I think this is one of the reasons I researched about this. So it was very interesting.
We all love Fernanda. Hello, Aline. So, first of all, thank you so much. That's my first experience, so I'm nervous too. Yeah. Don't worry about that.
It makes the two of us.
Não tá reservado, Matheus. Ela chegou e falou que chegaram lá falando que tinha apresentação, não sei o que lá. E não tem nada reservado, não. Ele só falou que ela falou que tinha um lugar maior que não dava na sala, porque era 3 números de direito, de administração e mais um.
Because I think when we read, we can see like the hard work that you put there, and also how you like the thing that you are writing about. So that's so good to see, because we don't see that so much in like academic things. Many people doing things that they don't like, but they have to do. Yeah. So that's really good. And another thing, besides being the person that I'm here to judge you, not to judge you, but your work. I'm a reader, so it was so good to read. So good. Like you have a really good analysis. I don't have basically anything to talk about it. And just like Fernanda said, there are some things like in the theoretical framework that I suggest you, but nothing like so absurd or something like that. It was amazing, really amazing. And the first thing that I want to say to you is that you should publish it. Yeah, it's really good. So I separed my talking here with you in some things. So first I will say like a general impression of it. So the first thing is that the research really demonstrates you as a researcher, and it was amazing to read, as I said. And also I see how engaged you are with the team and how strong was the argument. And just like Fernanda said too, it's so good for us to see something new in the fantastic literature, because we always say and see the same thing, and it's different. It's like a pedagogical thing, and you brought that for the literature, so it's really, really cool. And it's something like we would never thought of doing or seeing anywhere. So it's really good that. So the general impression is genius, basically, genius. So your work has many good things. I would say that your choice is really good. The short story is amazing. The reference that you use are like consecrated, right? Freire, which is the biggest one, Marieux, and also sci-fi, which is so cool to see, because in fantastic literature we have like this many genres inside it, and it's so nice to see that you are working with sci-fi, which is basically one of them that is always like left in the back. So yeah, so it's good. And your work is original. I searched for that in many things, many I don't know how to say that, periodicals. So many caps and stuff in universities of Brazil, and I didn't see anything. So it's so original. That's why I said to you that you have to publish it, because it is original, and also you can go further on that. You can like do your master's and your doctorate degree if you want, because it's something really new. And the content is really thought. I liked it a lot, specifically the main point, which is about the protagonist's emotional journey and the readers, like the conscientization of it. And you use like very nice terms that I've never seen before, like verification, and I was saying that before. So reification, alienation, authority, you say all about these themes, and it is so well written, so amazing. Congrats on that. So I had many suggestions for you, and just like Fernando, there are many parts that are highlighted, or I wrote something, but it's only me being a reader, or suggestions for you to think, or things that I'm talking to you, okay? So I will say some things that stopped me for a while, and I was thinking about it. And one of them is in your theoretical framework. You see there, let me go there and found it. Oh, it's here. Right in the beginning of the page 5, you are saying about that phenomenon thing that you are proposing. And also you are describing there about the fantastic. But I missed something more of the fantastic literature. I said here, if I was you, if you have time, of course, and if you want, I would write at least 1 or 2 more paragraphs on that, maybe trying to describe according to other authors too, not only Mahir, maybe using like consecrated authors that we have in the fantastic literature too. And I have some suggestions. One of them is Maurice Menon. I am the Menon fan. I love him, and he's the thesis of Menon is really cool for you to see because it's a very easy written something, and you should read it because there you can see more about, you can see how he describes how this character appears in the fantastical literature, how it goes throughout the narrative. It probably will help you a lot. And also Roas, David Roas. So Roas talks about the like a normal thing of the fantastic, and you say something about that. You start talking about that because you are talking about sci-fi and robots. So I would probably add Roas here because Roas talks very much about how this construction of the supernatural or these monsters like the robots and vampires and these things, the abnormal things of the literature, fantastic literature, comes to the short stories and narratives in general. So I will add that too. And also Casares. Casares is another author which talks about the fantastic literature too, and I would use it to like give a basic thing, a basic paragraph, which you describe about the fantastic literature. The paragraphs that you have are amazing, but I would add that, okay? So maybe in a future thing, I don't know. And my suggestions, like the biggest ones, are that. But Fernando talked about the post-human and post-colonialism that you said, like in a moment here. And I read that, and I don't remember where, but I said to you that you should like think about that part only and not take it off, but maybe write another article about that. Because I think you have so many ideas here. Like when you start talking about post-humanity, it's another article. You have like at least 3 articles here.
I was afraid to put too much information and leaves my main theme.
I know you. I get you. And you did great. You did great. But maybe in the future, you should come back here and search in your things what you said and do another articles because it's amazing, as I said before, but you have many informations here that you can like go in a more profound way. So I have some questions. So my first question, you kind of responded before, but why did you choose Robots Don't Cry? You said because you started seeing Fernando. Fernando is the guy there. Yes, I know. But why this short story and why not, for example, a romance?
When I talked with my advisor, Professor Marcio, I wanted to talk about conscientization. I wanted to bring this topic, and I wanted to use a fantastic. I don't remember if I said fantastic, but it was something about the side. I wanted to research this specific thing, and he suggested Robots Don't Cry, and I read it, and it got me really. I felt something, and I thought this is going to be what I'm going to study. It's not going to be any other story. It's going to be this one.
Okay, good. And another thing is, you bring here a very nice, like you write very nice on the theory of Paulo Freire, and I found it very cool to read it and also to know about it because I didn't know about that. And this concept of conscientization, you brought it into literature, but you also said that you should apply it in a classroom, right? But how different would it be? And not in a literature one?
I think, I believe I have to contextualize it, the class, and I think it is a very delicate process. I think it is very important and delicate, and I think I would see how can I apply any theme of conscientization. What does my students like, or anything like this, and study them. I think see how I can bring it in a more dynamic way also, so they can engage with it and achieve what I have researched in the literary, also in my students. I think would be nice to investigate how they could, instead of readers, as students, how they can get there of what I have researched. I think this.
Okay, good, very good. I would love to see that. I would love to see that. And one last thing is that really nice presentation you did here. Besides the computer things, you did a very nice presentation, and you also clarified for me some things that I was asking myself about. So thank you for that presentation too. And thank you for your effort to present for us. So that's it.
Thanks. I like to thank again my advisor, because everything you two have said so far, I wouldn't have come to any of it if it wasn't for my advisor help. He got me there. He really helped me a lot. And I don't think any of this would be possible. I wouldn't be able to write, like you said, I would be able to analyze any of this concept if it wasn't for him. So thank you so much. And that's it.
Bom, agora a gente vai convidar vocês novamente a se retirarem da sala enquanto a banca delibera. A gente encerra só por um momento a transmissão no YouTube. A gente retorna às 8h10 para a banca da Thayna, na transmissão, né? Vocês vão... Depois... Não tá, né? Peraí, deixa eu. Eu vi no lugar errado, tá? Eu já vou pegar ele. Não tá aí, né, Thayna, o nome? Não tá. Sim, eu lembro.
Tava com 2, a Thayna sem nenhum. Com o nome. Será? Pois é.
Aham.
Da Natália.
Pode ser, né? Mas, não, da Natália são os dois dela mesmo. Deixa eu ver uma coisa aqui. Ah, tá. Continua.
Mas cuidado, cuidado o nome ali. Na outra linha.
Confere se tá tudo certo ali, ó. Certo, né? Agora já. Já pode. Vai vir. Aqui na frente, mais pra trás.
Posso passar assim? Não. Hoje eu dor na minha cabeça. Acho que eu vou ter que da sua própria dor, que eu vou ter que tomar lá. Foi? Certo? Então, olá, boa noite mais uma vez. Sou o professor Márcio. Quero agradecer inicialmente a presença da banca que aceitou o convite, professora Fernanda, professora Aline, muito obrigado pela presença de vocês aqui. E agora quero apresentar aqui um trabalho culturalmente significativo, um trabalho que fala sobre feminismo e liberdade da mulher na literatura, que é muito interessante, que eu tenho certeza que vocês vão gostar bastante, que é esse trabalho desenvolvido pela Thayna com muito carinho.
Quer produzir? Você deveria ficar muito. Para desculpa.
Good evening. Today I will be talking about my final paper, which is entitled Chained to the Altar, Marriage as a Perpetuation of Women's Submissive Role in Bridgerton and the Rangers of Marriage. I'd like to begin by thanking especially my advisor, Professor Márcio Soares, and my co-advisor, Professor Simone Borghese, and my examining board. I'd also like to thank all my professors for helping me build my knowledge. The first topic is the statement of the problem, and I'll start by telling you that feminism emerged at the 20th century, and over time there have been other waves. Despite feminist achievements, the perception and social pressure surrounding marriage persists, especially concerning women. This pressure reinforces outdated norms linking women's worth through relationship status and reproductive choices. This situation highlights the necessity of studies that investigate the role of marriage in maintaining women's submission in contemporary society. And it is with the intention of approaching this problem that we decided to work on a comparative analysis of between the creations of two female or authors from highly different backgrounds, Adichie and Queen. So Adichie is a Black Nigerian writer who published the short story The Rangers of Marriage, and Queen is the North American writer who is behind the original idea of the television series Bridgerton. So the general objective of the research was to broaden the knowledge on how women's submission to marriage in contemporary society is depicted in literature. And the specific objectives were to examine the societal imposition of marriage on women in the contemporary fictional narrative selected, and to analyze how gender relations constructed by the dominant ideology take place within the institution of marriage. Now, about the theoretical framework, we recurred to feminist literary criticism to carry out the research, since according to Bonici and Zolin, its approach seeks to uncover how gender relations are constructed by the dominant ideology, also considering their interaction with other social relations. And Butler introduced the concept of performativity, to explain how gender identity is established in a social context through repetitive actions, discourses, etc., that reinforce certain behaviors and deem others inappropriate for men or women. And according to Bourdieu, the social order functions as an immense symbolic machine, tending to ratify the masculine domination. The author also emphasizes that women's history is marked by a high degree of constancy and permanence that is observed through the agents that seek to maintain this constancy and permanence, such as the church, the educational system, the state, and so on. Bearing that in mind, marriage, a destiny traditionally offered to women by society, is one of the instruments used by the church to maintain women's submission. Beauvoir also points out that once marriage takes on a contractual form, it has always been a different experience for men and women, as men are seen as independent and complete individuals in social context. Marriage, a destiny, and this perception contrasts with the experience of young women, for whom marriage seems to be the only justification for their existence. Beauvoir also points out that once marriage takes on we adopted three methods to carry out this research. It has always been a different experience with men and women. Comparative analysis, as men are seen as independent. Through the combination of these approaches, this study aimed to comparatively analyze the short story and this perception with the criticism of the television series Bridgerton within the framework of feminist literary criticism. Now, water pause. 1 minute. Moving on now to the analysis, I'd like to emphasize that the focus was the comparative analysis of the narrative similarities, especially concerning the protagonist's journeys. And set in the early 2000s, the short story Their Rangers of Marriage, it brings to light the story of Chinaza, a Nigerian woman who moves to the United States right after an arranged marriage to the Nigerian doctor Ofodil, who goes by Dave in the United States. And as the narrative unfolds, Ofodil insists that Chinaza adapts to the American culture in order to fit into her new environment. And the second narrative is a romance television series released in 2020 on the streaming service Netflix. It is set in the London Regency era, and it follows Daphne Bridgerton as she makes her debut in a competitive marriage market. Daphne initially catches the eye of Queen Charlotte and is deemed as the seasoned incomparable, but she struggles due to her eldest brother's interference in her courtships. to solve their respective problems, Daphne and Simon Basset, the Duke of Hastings that does not intend to marry, pretend to court each other, but this ends up in real love and marriage. So, considering the status of Butler, culture seems to be used as an indoctrination instrument of women in both narratives to maintain their place of submission in gender relations. In both narratives, this indoctrination seems to begin when marriage is treated in the same way by the protagonist's families, in which the man who is considered the head of the family is in charge for searching for the best match for the protagonist. As a result, their opinions are erased in this context, and their decision-making power are erased also. In the Rangers of Marriage, Chinasa presents a lack of decision-making power since the beginning of her journey, a situation that can be observed in this excerpt. What have we not done for you? We raise you as our own, and then we find you an Izibuji, a doctor in America. It is like we won a lottery for you, Auntie Ada said. Sorry. And similarly, Daphne's lack of decision-making power in Bridgerton can be observed in this dialogue between Anthony and Lady Bridgerton. Anthony is her eldest brother, and Lady Bridgerton is the matriarch of the family, in which these two members of the family seems to be competing to determine her future. So Anthony says, you have suitors, you do not have what matters, proposals, except of course from Lord Berbrook. Then Lady Bridgerton says, Daphne has charmed the Duke, Anthony. You must know that she does everything. So assuming that marriage is one of the instruments created by the church to indoctrinate women and maintain male dominance, Beauvoir emphasizes that men voluntarily assume the charge of marrying, while women become their husbands' vassals when married. She takes his name, she breaks more or less decisively with her past, becoming attached to her husband's universe. She gives him her person, virginity, and the situation described by Beauvoir becomes perceptible when Chinasa questions Ofodio about the reasons behind his decision to marry her. Why did you marry me? I asked. I wanted a Nigerian wife, and my mother said you were a good girl, quiet. She said you might even be a virgin. He smiled. So this interaction, especially the highlighted part, emphasizes the social expectation that a woman's value lies in her obedience, virginity, and conforming to the ideal wife role, aligning with Beauvoir's view of marriage as oppressive to women. This quote from Daphne aligns as well with Beauvoir's assertion. You have no idea what it is to be a woman, what it might feel like to have one's entire life reduced to a single moment. This is all I have been raised for. This is all I am. I have no other value. If I am unable to find a husband, I shall be worthless. So Bourdieu interprets the family as the institution that plays a central role in the reproduction of social structures that perpetuate and support the dominant or masculine ideology and thus maintain women's submission. And the family can be described as this institution that seeks to maintain women's submissive role. In the following quote of Bridgerton, when Lady Bridgerton talks about marriage with Daphne. Then she says, I have taught you to believe that marriage is the best that life has to offer, and that remains true. But it is not simply a partner that marriage provides. You will have comfort and a house to tend, and most importantly, children. You will throw yourself into raising your family, and you will find much joy, I am certain. The same can be observed when, in the Rangers of Marriage, when Chinasa narrates how her uncle and aunt would react if she told them she was getting divorced. You left your husband, Auntie Ada would shriek. Are you mad? Does one throw away a Guinea foal's egg? Do you know how many women would offer both eyes for a doctor in America, for any husband at all? And Uncle Ike would bellow about my ingratitude, my stupidity. So when marriage assumes a contractual form, the practice of dowry and inheritance enslaved women to their families. Now, considering the previous claim, we can conclude that the subjugation of women to their families persists even after marriage, whereby the husband assumes the role of the family and the woman becomes economically enslaved to him. And the described situation seems to happen to the protagonist of The Arrangers of Marriage when Mia offers her a job. You know, my sister's the manager at Macy's, she said. They're hiring entry-level salespeople in the women's department, so if you're interested, I can put in a word for you, and you're pretty much hired. She owes me one. Something leaped inside me at the sudden and new thought of earning what would be mine. I don't have my work permit yet, I said, but Dave has filed for you? Yes. Quite the chapter. Upon observing the highlighted phrase, it is possible to suggest that Ophodio explores Shinaza's economic dependence on him in order to exert control over her. As the narrative unfolds, the reader is left uncertain if the work permit was in fact filed. Similarly, in Bridgerton, Daphne's subjugation seems to persist even after a marriage. As in the Regency era, women were not permitted to possess property or financial assets. So when a woman became a bride at that time, the man responsible for her was also responsible for presenting her dowry to the future husband. And after the marriage, the husband took ownership of anything the bride had, including clothing, jewelry, the children, the bride's body, and so on. And it is possible to observe that on this quote, when Simon says, "You cannot possibly be thinking of marrying him." Then Daphne says, "If I am unable to secure another offer, there may be no alternative. Unlike you, I cannot simply declare I do not wish to marry." As Daphne herself states, she's unable to decline marriage. And as the story will unfold, we can understand that the main reason for that seems to be due to her lack of access to property, financial assets, and so on. Thus, it can be concluded that her need to marry can be justified by her need to secure financial provision, a situation that does not affect Simon. Now, the results. The little or no decision-making power situation of the protagonist appears to be reinforced by cultural norms that reduce women to the roles of wives and subordinate them to the masculine authority. And the narratives also show us that the protagonist's familial structures reinforce societal expectations that prioritize marriage and subjugate women by depicting marriage as their ultimate goal. And by doing this, the feminists maintain the dominance of patriarchal structures. And the dynamic of marriage portrayed as a commercial transaction results in women's ongoing financial dependency that is initiated with their families and subsequently transferred to their husbands. And finally, based on Butler, Bourdieu, and Beauvoir, we could conclude that despite being set in different centuries, both narratives highlight marriage as an institution that perpetuates women's submissive role, showcasing the persistence of patriarchal structures in Western societies under the weight of cultural traditions, social institutions, and economic control. These are my references, and thank you very much.
Ah, tá, eu estou mexendo a câmera. Okay, so good evening again. And again, thank you now, Thayna, and again, Professor Marcio, for inviting me to be here to talk about Thayna's research. Well, first of all, don't worry. First of all, it's very good to be here, and it's different from Laura's, from being on Laura's board, because I was, for a short time, I was Thayna's advisor in a very distant past. And it's very nice to see where your work ended up, right? Because back there, I think it was last year, right? 2023. We were trying to find a path, trying to find a way. Thayna always said she wanted to work with feminist literary texts or this approach. And we were trying to find a way that was more suitable to her taste. And it's very nice to see that she found herself and very well. I think you found yourself very well in a comparative work, which is very interesting. We were at that time, I remember we were thinking of Chimamanda and something else, and you didn't find the something else, and now you did, and I like it very much. And when I received your text, I was happy to see that you chose Bridgerton, because I watched Bridgerton all seasons during my time, like this last 6 months, and so I said, okay, now I'm gonna be able to really analyze, to read her work and analyze and give her suggestions. And that's what I did. So again, as I said to Laura, I think your work is very well written. I remember you had that verb last year when advising you. You write very well. You use the words very well. I think you choose your words. You're not repetitive, and you can find the right spot between being too formal and too informal. So I think it's a very agreeable, very nice work to read. And again, you write very fluently. It's very easy to read. It never gets boring. It never gets tedious. So congratulations on your writing. I like your title very much. I like the way you're simple and direct, objective. And I don't have suggestions to change your title. A chata do título. Right, but I also don't have almost nothing to correct, nothing to, but I have lots of suggestions. Again, I love the subject of feminist, the feminist approach in general, so I have lots of suggestions for you to expand your study. So again, if you want to go on with the study and you want some references and sources, I have all of them here in the comment section. So if you need them, I will send it to you and to Professor Marcio, and then you'll be able to think if you want to change anything or if you want to go on studying. So first of all, what I would say, I think you wrote a short theoretical framework. I would put a lot of other stuff here, and the first thing I would suggest is actually two authors from, I think they're psychologists, not exactly from the literary field, Pearson and Pope. They wrote about the journey of the heroine, the female hero's journey, and they write about 4 myths: the myth of female inferiority, the myth of virginity, the myth of romantic love, and the myth of maternal self-sacrifice. So I think all of them have something to do with your research. And maybe if you had them in your theoretical framework, you would be able to analyze Daphne and I forgot the name of the other protagonist, Shinaza, concerning all of these myths. So I think it would make your article more richer, actually. But again, it's not necessary for this the way it is now. It's an article for a graduation course, so it's interesting if you want to expand. So this is the first suggestion I would have for you. Something I would only so it's just advice, nothing very important. Be careful with the excess of connectors. Sometimes I'm reading the text. It's like I know it happens when we're writing formal texts. academic tests. We feel the need of putting in this context, thus, blah, 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 in every sentence. Sometimes it gets excessive, but it's not too much. Don't worry. Okay. I try to highlight the parts where I saw this happening, but it's not important, and you use them correctly, so it's just a matter of cleaning the writing. Let's go on with the other suggestions here. As I read your text, I remembered Laura's text, and she talks about reification. And I think that's exactly what happens here too with your women, right? With your female characters. They are reified, objectified all the time. Even they turned into commercial objects, right? So if I remember well, Zolin, the one in the big book, the one that I used to send you all the time, the text, she talks about that. So it would be another suggestion for you to talk about the objectification of women. Okay, another suggestion, again, just to expand your work. And something else that I find very interesting, okay, you know that I'm a lover of the Gothic. So I think there's two sections in your text when you talk about a father and the family and the influence of family and fathers and brothers on the lives of women. And there is a term which is paterfamilias. It's a term from Latin, which means the man of the house. And if you want, there's lots of texts on the female Gothic that talk about this figure of power. And it's a figure of power that really, he dominates the household, he dominates the families, especially the women, and he determines their future and their present, their future, and sometimes he even confines them. So I think it has a lot to do with the man that you depict here. So maybe it would be another source for you to use when talking about family, and especially in this context. I think these are the main suggestions I would have to you for you to expand your texts, your text. But I have no other corrections to make other than just congratulating you again and saying again that I'm happy to see that you found a very interesting place to put your desire of working with the feminine. And again, marriage has a lot of texts. We have lots of texts that talk about marriage. And even if you want to go on with the Bridgerton, season 2, season 3, I don't know if there's a 4th one, they go on talking about marriage, and you could maybe go on exploring this theme, and you would do it very well, probably. Okay, so I don't have questions for you. And again, congratulations, Thayna. I'm very happy to see where your work ended up. Congratulations to Professor Marcio too for helping you with the research. That's it.
Thank you for. So, hi, Thayna. So first of all, I'd like to congratulate you. I think you did a great job, as well as Marcio. So I think I have some points that I'd like to talk about. So first of all, I think structurally your monograph demonstrates very clear, very logical structure, adhering to the conventions. So everything is flawless in that sense, in my opinion. Content-wise, it is also very well written, as Fernanda has pointed out, and I think you do write very clearly and in a way that doesn't get tiring, because you don't, you don't beat around the bush very much. You just go straight to the point, and I like that. I also do that in my writing. I don't like to, try to add things. Add so many things that are going to be just, decoration. So I think you also have a very good command of the English language, which is something that I that I commend you for. So the first thing in your introduction, there is a saying where you talk about Bourdieu, and he talks about how phallocentric society begins in Genesis, and he talks about Adam. So one thing that got me thinking, and it's not something that you need to add, but it's something that I'd like to point out just because, is that he talks about how this figure of Adam is important in that sense. But I also think that we can discuss it through translation, because I always get things on that side of translation, and think about how the Bible and the sacred texts, they tend to be biased in a way. Their translations are not always free from ideology, right? So there is an author, Alexander Gomola, and he wrote about the translation of this exact part where you talk about Adam, and he says that in the Bible, Adam is actually not really a proper name in all the text. So it begins by saying that Adam could be translated as one or person, and so it doesn't have to be a gender. So when there is this division, when there is this multiplying to two into a man and a woman, it doesn't mean that it was a man and then a woman came from a man. It means just that it was a being, and this being was made into two. And then another part which is interesting that he talks about is when he says Ezer Kenegedo, and I don't know how to say that. So usually it's translated as suitable helper, referring to the role of a woman in regard to a man, as planned by God. God, like Adam, in this multi-interpretable phrase, may be rendered in more than one way, presenting her as either equal or subordinate to a man. Also, in this case, decisions made by translators even today may strengthen the traditional pattern of relations between the sex in Christianity. So I think this is an interesting point, if you want to add it, because it also breaks with this idea that the Adam is a man and then the woman came from his rib. And also there is a version, I couldn't find a text that supports that, but saying that rib is actually not a correct translation as well, saying that it could be just a side or a part, which changes completely the way we understand this passage, right? So this is just an observation, right? Towards your text, there is on page 9 in your analysis, I understand your choice to exclude the discussions of racial and post-colonial themes because they are very deep and it would take a lot of space, and you have already written very much in your text. But I do think that it would be a good avenue of research that you could follow. So especially Shinaza's experience as an immigrant woman, because it could provide this rich insight into intersectional oppression. So talking about intersectional feminism, I also would have liked to see a little bit of more Kimberly Williams Crenshaw, Bell Hooks, Angela Davis, because they're more contemporary, and they bring this idea that feminism is much more race related and class related, and there are many more subdivisions to it, and it all impacts how you can read. So for example, if you're talking about Bridgerton, and it's mainly well, of course in Bridgerton the whole idea is kind of not real life, right, but like a parallel universe or something, but they're white, right? So I think now I forgot Daphne. I forgot Shinaza, I forgot Daphne. So Daphne is white and her family is white, and then from England. So it's a completely different approach to feminism than for Shinaza, who is a migrant woman in another country. So this migrant women condition could also be a good place for an analysis that could provide more depth into the discussion. On page 10, you say, I think I just wanted to point out that Bridgerton is a little anachronistic, right? Because
even though it portrays as Regency era, it's not real Regency era, right? So there are many things that are worthy mentioning towards race representation, South Asian, Black. So because really in Regency era England, what were the places of these people, you know? So I think it's an interesting thing because I believe one for straightforwardness in regard to what London Regency era was actually like, and even for positive reasons because it reflects resistance, in my opinion, in privileged historical accuracy in detriment of representativeness, right? Because it focus more on representativeness than being accurate, right? So I think it's a valid form of striking back again against colonialism, hegemony. So I think it's worthy mentioning if you can, and if you think it's relevant. So I also liked very much that you mentioned the importance of economical matters in submission, because it really is something that even today, if we think about the conditions of women, it's very much a present element in domestic violence and abuse. The fact that many women are subjugated by men because they don't own property, because they don't have money. So this is something very important. Also, there is a theory by Foucault in which he talks about aliança, né? And he talks about how this marriage also affects men and how it affects women. And so it's very interesting. So if you're interested, I could try to find it, because I'm not sure I know, but I would like, I think it would add to your monograph. On page 12, you mentioned a text saying, a quote in Adichie's, in which I liked it very much when you said in this passage that man holds the knowledge, right? Because this also relates to Foucault, and if you think about knowledge and power, and how knowledge is connected to power, and how people who have the power have knowledge, and they believe they do, as you said in your analysis, right? Because sometimes we underestimate the power of knowledge, right? On page 13, I commend you for the choice of choosing to deal with the influence of family, which is also something that Fernanda mentioned. So the role of family, maintaining women's submission concerning marriage, is also a very important thing. And I also have some questions if there's time. So you mentioned that Daphne's she counter arguments when she's talking to Anthony. In that part, you may say, I want you to know I'm not angry with you. I do not blame you for what transpired. And then she says, do not treat me like a child. I did this, right? So in this part, she also says later on, you think that just because I am a woman, I am incapable of making my own choices. So while your marriage is critiqued as oppressive in your work, Bridgerton also portrays instances in female agency where women actually have a say in what's happening, right? So these nuances could be explored to present a more balanced argument, maybe. So I'd like to know if you believe that there are moments in the text where these female characters challenge patriarchal structures effectively, and how these instances impact the overall argument of submission and powerlessness.
Okay, I think Chinaza, she tries to I forgot the word. Oh my gosh. She tries to challenge. Yes, I forgot even in Portuguese. Oh my God. She tries to challenge the patriarchal structures and anything. But in the end, I don't know if you read the short story, but in the end, she ends up accepting that she can't run from the life she's in, the choices she has made. Then she just accepts that she has to live with Ophodil and tries to work without his knowledge of this. But Daphne, I think she's more aware of the things that's happening, and she tries more to challenge things that she says that we can observe that in almost every quote that I put in my final paper.
Yeah, and I think that even Chinaza's rebellion in a sense of trying to work, even though it's something that is not what her husband would like, I think we can see it as a form of resistance or going against this oppression that she's under, right? Also, considering Bridgerton's wide reach, as Fernanda said, that she has watched it, and I believe many people here have watched it. I don't know. So, how might the show influence contemporary discussions about marriage and feminism?
Let me think. Oh, I think if you think only in season 1, that's the season I'm talking about, I think it might influence on discussions like the ones I brought, but in the other seasons, the marriage relations brought on are more how can I say? They're more modern, but yeah, they're more complex, more contemporary. But in the first season, just like you said to me, there are more things that I should have explored, but I couldn't explore. But the relationship between Daphne and Simon, it's not healthy. So, and in the other seasons, we can see this, but we can see other healthy relationships also. So I think people can work on this, on healthy relationships also,
Yeah. All right, great. So last question, how does your analysis apply to our own context? Because you analyze something that is like British related, England, and then another one that is more like African/American. And how do you think these discussions could tie or connect to our Brazilian culture in the contemporary times?
Yeah, I couldn't work on this cultural theme as much as I wish I could. So I don't think my work specifically my work could contribute for these themes, because I wanted so much to work on the racial things, on the economic thing, on like everything, but I couldn't. So I just sat with my advisor and I said, I need to choose something that I will work on, because I want to write about anything. And then I was like with already 20 pages and then it was like, you need to stop writing.
Yeah, but Thayna, I think that's a good sign. It shows you have great potential for, post-graduation studies, for going forward with your research. And I think you should. I think you have a lot of potential, and I would like to see you move forward and be successful. So congratulations to you, to Marcio, and also to
Thank you. I also like to thank all you guys for helping me. My advisor, maravilhoso. Prof. Aline, Prof. Fer, I love you so much. Like, Prof. Fer, you're the one that inspired me to do this work. Like, when we started to work on the optativa, that's when I started to love feminist literature, feminist analysis. You too, probably. So you're my inspiration too, probably. You three were my inspirations to do this work. So I love you very much. Thank you for everything. Não tô.
Bom, pessoal, então a gente vai convidar vocês para esperarem ele fora um pouquinho enquanto a banca delibera. E já chamamos vocês de volta. A gente encerra aqui, faz um intervalo aqui na transmissão e voltamos às 21h10 com a banca do Alex.
Aonde?
Todos com mais?
Não, agora tá.
Agora eu acho que ali não estava chegando.
É porque só esse que né?
Estou esperando aqui, eu acho.
O certo era ali na discussão ali. O certo é ser, eu acho. Seria agora eu passo para você levantar também.
Pode começar, né? Você já está.
Sim.
Broadcast.
Aqui. E boa noite novamente, pessoal. Eu sou o professor Márcio, estou aqui com a professora Aline para apresentar o trabalho do Alex, que foi orientado por mim e co-orientado por ela. É um trabalho que fala de um personagem muito conhecido, muito amado por todos vocês e que traz também uma nova perspectiva sobre esse personagem, mostrando o quanto ele é complexo e o quanto ele pode nos falar também sobre nós mesmos, tá? Esse é o trabalho do Alex. Aproveitem.
Vamos lá.
Good evening, guys. How are you? So, my name is Alex, and today I'm going to be talking about my final paper, which is called Batman: A Literary and Psychological Analysis of the Dark Knight Returns. Okay. First of all, I would like to say thank you to some people that are here, Professor Marcio, Professor Aline, who helped me doing this work. They didn't kill me. I deserved it, but they didn't kill me. I would also like to thank the members of the board, Professor Fer, Professor Aline, that came from Maringá. And also, I would like to thank a person that is here, that is my English teacher, Teacher Zuleika, that taught me English since I was a little kid. Also, my girlfriend and my family. So without further ado, let's start. I'm going to start talking about a little bit of my summary. We're going to start talking about the introduction of my paper, then we're going to go to the theoretical framework, the methodology, the analysis. I divided it into four main categories that are the narrator's perspective. In this work, Batman is the character and also the narrator. Sorry. So we have his view of the narrative. We have the setting, which is Gotham City. We have some symbols and themes, the psychological analysis, my conclusion, and in the end, I'm going to present you with my references. Here is the cover of the graphic novel that I decided to work, which is The Dark Knight Returns, which was made by Frank Miller in 1986. Okay, so my work, I decided to analyze the character in this graphic novel, right? The Dark Knight Returns. So I'm going to analyze the literary and psychological aspects of Batman in this Frank Miller's graphic novel. The focus of my work it's on Batman's dual identity, Bruce Wayne and Batman, his trauma, his strict moral code, that is, he doesn't kill people, and the guiding aspects of his actions. The aim is to explore how these elements contribute to the character's development and inner conflicts. Okay, so about my theory, my theoretical framework, I used four main authors, four main theories. So the first one is Betty Brage, which is the book A Personagem, where she defines a character, emphasizing how the character is constructed not only into words but into the story and language. Scott McCloud, which is a theoretical book about graphic novels and comic books. Travis Langley, which is the main theoretical framework for the psychological analysis. Walter Moreira, his final paper and his master's degree final paper, okay, and in this work, he investigates the poetic and symbolic aspect of comics. So I decided to use him, advised by my advisor, okay? So my methodology, I had two different approaches, which is the bibliographic research and the qualitative analysis. The bibliographic research involves detailed study of theoretical texts, for example, Scott McCloud and Betty Brage. And in the qualitative analysis, I focused, on the psychological aspects using Langley, Walter Moreira, and my analysis. Next one, please. Okay, now just summarizing what I said before, we're going to divide our analysis in four main parts: narrator's perspective, setting, symbols and themes, and psychological analysis. Okay. As I mentioned before, Batman is the main character of the story and also is the narrator. So we have moments in which the narrative is written in first person and also in third person. And this seems to highlight the contrast between Bruce Wayne's actions and his inner thoughts. And we see some internal monologues, they reveal that Batman's psychological stage. And in third person narration, we focus on the Gotham's aspect, like what is happening in the story, the city, how it's depicted, and so on. Now talking about the setting, if you know a little bit about the Batman's story, you know that he lives in Gotham City, and this is the main background for all of the narrative. So Gotham City, along the narrative, is always depicted as a decaying and chaotic environment. So and this mirrors Batman's own personal turmoil, because he acts like a very good person, like he always search for justice, but inside he has some confusion, and Gotham City serves as a mirror of these conflicts. So, as I said before, the Gotham City is depicted as decaying in chaotic environment and has a lot of dystopian elements, and this emphasizes the strive for control and justice that Batman's confront all through the narrative. Some symbols and themes, very important here. We have the bat symbol, the Joker, and as I said before, Gotham City. The bat symbol, it's a representation of fear and power at the same time, because he uses the bat to cause fear in his enemies. And for him, it's a power, because when he was a kid, he was very afraid of it, and he decided to use this in his like as a good thing for him. So he transformed the childhood trauma into a tool for doing justice. The Joker, Batman is a very correct person. He always tries to control things, and Joker represents the exact opposite of this. He is the personification of chaos and the difference between control and, I don't know, like very random, like all his actions are randomized. He only wants chaos, and he doesn't have a real motivation to do things. And finally, Gotham City represents his fights and as well as his internal struggle to maintain order. some other themes that we find on the narrative are redemption, control, and moral ambiguity. So this moral code that he doesn't kill people because his parents were murdered in front of him when he was a kid on the narrative, and this moral code always stands in the way of Batman because he's always he's always in the brink of breaking his code, and this acts in him as a source of strength and also a burden that he carries to all his life. So now for the psychological analysis, we're going to talk a little bit more about his thoughts and his motivations. The first thing that I observed was the relation between his trauma and PTSD, that is post-traumatic syndrome disorder, stress disorder, sorry. And this is something that some people face when going to wars or going through a traumatic event, that they struggle to live. They struggle to do everything on a daily basis. And we have this in Batman because his parents being murdered was the turning point of his life to become Batman. So also the dual identity, that we have the tension between Bruce Wayne and Batman, because Bruce Wayne is a personification of a playboy. He just wants to show people that he is vain, he doesn't have any depth to him. But this is only because he wants to trick people not to discovering his true identity, that is Batman. Batman is a coping mechanism for his trauma, as I said before, and it causes his isolation and eternal conflict. Okay, and also his moral code, he refuses to kill, as I said before, and this is very, very present in the narrative. Okay, in this part of the analysis, I compared him with the three other main villains that we have in the narrative. There are Joker, Two-Face, and Superman. Joker, as I said before, he represents chaos. He represents everything that Batman stands for. Like, he represents the opposite of that. Two-Face, he also has his internal struggles. He has his dual identity, but the way he faces things, it's by randomizing things. So he uses a coin, he flips a coin, and then he decides what to do. And that for Batman, this is what could happen if he lost control. Like if he killed someone, he would become like Two-Face. And in a moment on this narrative, we have a fight between Superman and Batman, because Joker kills himself and frames Batman, and the government they order Superman to stop Batman, and Batman and Superman in this narrative represents like blind obedience, because he does everything he's told to, and Batman has his own moral code. So this is a contrast between them. So to conclude, my results, his depth, his psychological depth is defined by his trauma, his duality, and his strict moral code. These three main aspects, they construct his heroism and also his inner turmoil, his inner confusion. His interactions with Joker, Two-Face, and Superman highlight his struggle to balance control, to achieve justice, to control chaos. And to conclude, The Dark Knight Returns, this graphic novel that I chose, portrays Batman as a very complex figure that continuously navigates the fine line between order and destruction. He's always in the brink of breaking his code, and this is very, very important, this narrative, because for me, it was one of the reasons that I chose it. It's because we have a very, very dark Batman. He is now 50 years old. has a lot of struggles, a lot of trauma, and he's alone in the world, let's say in this way. And his confusion, his fight for control, it's driven by a past he can never escape. Like everything happened in his life, and he's now dealing with the results of it. Now I have my references that I used in this paper, and that's it, guys. If you have any questions, you can send me by email on this, or send me a WhatsApp message, and that's it. Thank you.
Okay, so good evening once more. Hello, Alex. Well, I would like to breathe. You're okay. So thank you, Alex, for inviting me. Thank you, Professor Marcio and Professor Aline, everyone that invited me. Alex has a case very similar to Thayna's. I was his advisor for a short while. And again, I have to say the same thing. Sorry for repeating myself, but I'm glad to see that you made it here, because for a while I thought Alex is gonna disappear into, I don't know, maybe Batman's world or something, because he spent some time, I don't know, right? And now you're here and your work is huge. I was very surprised to see that you wrote 30 plus pages. Said, okay, so he came back and everything worked out fine. And so, first of all, I'm glad to see that you wrote what you wanted to write. Right? I remember since the first moment we talked, you wanted to write about Batman. This was your only, not your main, but your only wish. And I'm glad to see that you made it, and you really found yourself. In the beginning, you wanted to write about movies and also the comics. Now you found yourself, let's say a more confined objective here, and I think you have a research, a strong research. You have something to analyze, and you managed to really analyze what you proposed to do. So, first of all, I have to talk about the title again. I would say you chose a literary and psychological analysis of The Dark Knight Returns. This title leads us to thinking and that you're going to analyze the comics, or like the whole thing, and it's actually a character study, very specific, right? So I would just suggest you take away the returns maybe and leave Dark Knight or any other way you prefer, just to let your reader know that you're talking about the character, and that's it, not the whole story, not the whole stuff. Okay, so that's the first suggestions. And then when you start talking about your objective in your introduction, I think you're very clear. So you say this study aims to explore the complexities of Batman's dual persona, and that's what you do. That's what you want to do, and that's what you really do. Okay, you talk about his contradictions, his different opinions, and he's being Bruce Wayne, he's being Batman, and you really do it. But there are some things that I would like to point out. It doesn't take the merit and the shining of your paper, but it's actually just suggestions again for you if you want to. Remember, you talked about going on with your academic studies. So if you still intend to do it, maybe you will appreciate some suggestions. So one thing that is important, I think you should say in your theoretical framework, are comics literature? Because you're talking about literature here, and this is never, I think you say something on this subject, but you don't really delve into it. So it's a discussion you might want to include in your theoretical framework. Is it literature? Why? Why is it, what are the characteristics that the comics have in common with more traditional literature? So this is something to expand your theoretical framework. And another thing that actually I hope you can help me think about. You talk a lot about PTSD, post-traumatic disorder. Where did you take this information from? Is it a text that talks about literature and art, or a more specific, like a medical one?
The book that I used was the Langley one. He does this thing. He analyzes psychologically the character Batman, and also the villains. Like, he analyzes in general Batman, Joker, all his enemies, and it's something that he mentions in his book, and I wanted to use. So it's in the context that I made the relation with what is written in the book. I took it from the book.
Okay. I think it's nice to mention because, as you said, it's someone who comments Batman, but we should always be careful because it's kind of a step away from literature and art, since you start talking about a disease or a condition, something like that. So careful with that. Maybe what I would change, maybe not spending a whole section talking about this disorder, or just mentioning it because it's something we can't really evaluate or adapt to literature, since it's very specific, right? But this is, again, a suggestion, since you took it from an author that already comments the comics.
Yeah, I wanted to use on my psychological analysis part. I wasn't like not exactly focused on the literary aspect, but I guess it makes sense.
Okay. No, I think it should be there, but maybe not as a whole section, or I don't know. It's just a thought, actually. What else? I miss the visual part of comics in your work. You talk about it, but I think you should talk a bit more, because in your introduction or in your theoretical framework, you mentioned this. We have the literary aspects, we have the visual elements, and then the visual elements don't really come up in the rest of the work. There is a part where you talk about Gotham City, that is very dark, decaying. I think this is the part where you should focus. Okay, here we have the visual elements meaning something to the story, adding meaning to the story. And I think there are lots of other parts that you will see the visual elements acting to help us build meaning, right? So I think this is something, since we're talking about comics and the mix, right, of literature and visual elements, I think they should be more present. What else? Let's see. Okay, again, Gothic studies. I have suggestions on that field. I think, well, Batman is very Gothic. You know that. So you could bring lots of information from the Gothic world to this paper. I understand that it would be too big, so if you want to expand again, these are some ideas, right? We have Batman he's dual, so he is at the same time he's a common citizen and he is also kind of monstrous. He's kind of villainous, right? And this is very gothic. And also Gotham City is very, very gothic. It has all the features of a gothic environment, a gothic setting. And also the themes you have, you talk about lots of gothic themes, but we also have the night, madness, we have death, we have what else? The past that comes to haunt the future, the present. All of these are very gothic themes, and I think they would enhance and enrich your work. What else do we have here?
There are some moments in my paper I couldn't like write this on my presentation because we needed to be very quick. There are some moments that I emphasize that he hallucinates with a bed. He's having these dreams and it's very dark and very gothic, and maybe I should focus on that, expand on that too.
No, but I think you did great. It's just a matter of maybe some parts you could bring up to make it richer. And what I would always suggest you to maybe be careful with is this: you talk about visual elements and you don't bring them up so much, and you really focus on the contradictions, Bruce Wayne and Batman, and you do this. So since the start of your text in your introduction and then methodology, try to always say the same thing: contradictions and what else? I forgot the words you used, but always talking about the psychological depth of the character, because this is what you actually do. So sometimes we use some other words and we don't see them later in the analysis. So try to just take them out and stick with what you have done, right? Because you have done this, you have really analyzed the character, Batman character, through lots of different lenses, and this is your work, and you managed to do it. And so I think it's a very good work. I have lots of things written here. You will be able to get to them later. And if you want help finding the texts that I mentioned here, just call me. You know where to find me. And congratulations! I think you really got to do what you wanted, and yeah, I think you were successful with it, Alex. Congrats.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. First of all, Alex, thank you so much for this invitation. It was very important for me. And thank you so much, Aline and everybody here from this park. I hope we can do the same, like, exchange some ideas on this part anyway. And I was very happy to see your work when you asked me to be part of this this moment, right, in your life, which is quite important, and which was about Batman, which is a comic book. So first of all, I'd like to say that I got really impressed because I really enjoy comic books. But for some reason, people don't see them as something that you should analyze or talk about it in the university, so people tend to be more with the classics and things like that, especially graphic novels. There aren't many things about that, maybe in more, I don't know, modern visions, other universities, but at least at Wayne, we don't see that much. We see that our students are reading comic books. We see that they're very important. We see that there are many movies and games and everything that surrounds them that are being used nowadays. But for some reason, they're not in the university. Probably because if you see somebody like a university professor reading Batman, they're going to think, so what are you doing here? And I should be reading other things. So I think when you bring something like that to the academic place, it's very, very important. So thank you so much for your work. It was very well written. I really enjoy reading it. I read it like really, really fast because again, I'm like a huge fan. I love comic books. I love Batman, of course, for sure. And this comic book specifically, The Dark Knight Returns, it's amazing. The only thing I think I missed a little bit in your presentation was like more of the parts of the comic book, because you bring a lot of many Batmans. You even bring the latest one, which one I forgot from Twilight. Yeah, Pattinson, which I love, by the way. But I miss, in your presentation, the comic book, so people would know what we're talking about. Because even though for those who have not read The Dark Knight Returns, they may think it's kind of that Batman maybe that they're more childish and that many children like to play and do it. We have a different kind of character here, with more darker and sinister, and that there's a lot of depth in this character, which is really amazing what you did here. And the fact that you pointed out so many things about psychology, it got me thinking about your work, which was quite amazing, because we don't usually do this kind of analysis, especially in our field of languages and literature and things like that. And there's a lot of psychological traits here. In fact, I think you could even, like divide this work. I don't know if you feel how do you feel about a master's or something, because this was the work of a master's in my opinion, but you could even divide them into more articles and things like that, because there's so much to talk about, so even you do a lot of things, important things, so I would like to read more about that, more about these things that you have written and all your opinions about that, so thank you so much for your work. It was really, really, really amazing. However, I think, of course, I do have some things here to point out, which is there is this path, this way that we have to try to define things, because, well, we're from the language course, of course, and we try to define comic books and graphic novels, and they're quite different. I mean, if you see Truman and Monica, this is a comic book, but however, if you see Frank Miller or I don't know, many other ones, many graphic novels that we know, and maybe Marjorie Strapp and things like that. We know that they're graphic novels, but they're quite different. However, I think I missed a little bit of this part, because I know that it's something that it's difficult to try to establish these differences, but I think they will be very important, so people know that you're not talking about comics specific, but about comic books. And another thing about, of course, because we do that because we're from a language course, to try to define the graphic novels or the comics as being literature or as not being literature, because we know that it's a type of art, and I think we should treat it as art, not as literature. It has narrative elements for sure. Definitely, you prove it here in your work, but I think we should treat it as art, because if we talk about it as literature, it's a little bit difficult, and you may find some difficulties, in this path, because there are so many people and that they do not define it exactly as literature, So I think that's all, what I would say. Of course, I have like some things that I have written here, but they're very minimal, about capital letters, and using things like that. Maybe a little bit of punctuation here, but, very, very, very minimal, all in that. Let me see. And well, more than that, I think you really like to use the Langley, right, about in your theoretical framework, but I think I missed a little bit more of the other ones, because I think since you maybe like it Langley so much, it appears in all of the parts, but the others, they're just, just a little bit in all of the other parts. Let me see what else here I would like to point out in your analysis. Yeah, and also I think I missed more of the narrative aspects, but I know again it was like a very difficult work to do. I totally get it. And the psychological part, I think it was so difficult, maybe, I don't know, I'm just guessing, for you to talk about something that it's about psychology, and maybe it's not our field of work, but maybe you focus on trying to do what is the most difficult part that would be for you, for sure, and maybe you let the narrative a little bit down, you know. So I just miss more of this discussion about the narrative. Maybe because you got very worried about the psychological part, you know.
Yeah.
Because of course it was not your field of work. So, and the psychological part is really, really good. And again, let me see. And yes, of course, I agree with everything that Fernanda said. You know, all the crop parts, they're so important. You know, and especially in this part here, when you mentioned, I think twice, which is uh, he's the surgeon. You know, when he's trying in the middle of the mud. And I think you could even continue and keep on with the next part of the crop, you know, especially he says something tells me to stop with the leg. I don't listen to it because this is Batman, you know, this is his duality. This is the kind of person he is. So this kind of narrative, this is what we expect for him, you know, even though he is being away from like helping stop crime, fighting crime for so long, then he comes back in this comic book. You know, I felt like, okay, so keep on going, and maybe again because you probably like this part so much, you didn't want to, I don't know, extend so much and talk more. But I think this part even comes, I think, twice. I think you could, I don't know, put other parts, keep on with the next part, because they're very, very, very interesting and very, very important. Okay. Let me see. Well, all of the parts here, I read it. It was a long time ago, but for some reason, I think the art of Miller is kind of strange, you know. But it's a good strange. It's a strange that makes you keep on reading. It's ugly, but it's nice.
Yes.
And well, more and all, I think that's all of that I want to say. Especially, don't try to mix again literature and graphic novels and comic books, because again, people, they tend to they don't look well about it. Say that it's art because it is a type of art, you know, but it's unfortunately, to be literature would have to have we would have to, I don't know, delve into other other specificities, which we do not have time for that. Okay, but thank you so much, Alex. Thank you for your work, and I really hope to see and to read more things about you, especially about comic books.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for giving me this feedback. I agree 100%. And that's it. Thank you again, Marcio and Aline. Thank you for not killing me. I know I wasn't the easiest not orientando, advisee. I wasn't the easiest advisee, but we did it. Thank you.
Bom, pessoal, agora então a gente convida vocês para esperarem um pouquinho lá fora, enquanto a banca delibera. A gente encerra a nossa transmissão no YouTube e agradecemos especialmente a Cauana, o Luca e o William e o Matheus que ajudaram a gente com a transmissão, o pessoal da TI aqui da Unespar. Até uma próxima oportunidade.